the moment the security guard leaned in and whispered, "Ma'am, I saw your sister pour something into your drink." My name, Hortensia Bloom, stopped meaning safety. I looked at that champagne glass, the one Vanessa handed me, with a smile I used to believe in, and realized it wasn't love shining in those bubbles. It was betrayal. I didn't flinch. I didn't ask why. I just smiled, because I finally understood what kind of war I was in. That night, I wasn't her sister anymore. I became her reckoning, and I was going to make sure the truth had the last word. Charleston shimmered under soft golden lights when I walked into the tasting room. I arrived early. Old habits die hard. The place was elegant, polished, full of laughter that didn't quite reach the eyes of the people making it. Vanessa appeared in a champagne-colored dress, glowing under the chandeliers. "You actually came," she said, voice sweet, rehearsed. "Of course," I smiled. "It's not every day you open your first restaurant." She ordered champagne for both of us. I asked for water, but when the server brought the glasses, she insisted. "To us," she said, raising her glass. I lifted mine, pretending. When she left the table to greet guests, I stayed still, watching the bubbles rise and die. Then a low voice broke through the music. "Ma'am, may I have a word?" I turned. The security guard, older, steady, eyes too honest, leaned closer. "I saw your sister pour something into your drink," he murmured. My heartbeat didn't spike. It steadied. "Are you sure?" "Yes, ma'am." Small vial, clear liquid. I thanked him, slid the champagne aside, and smiled as Vanessa returned. "You haven't drunk yet," she teased. "Waiting for the toast," I said evenly. Later, outside, the sea breeze cut through the sweetness of the night. I looked back at the glowing sign and thought, sometimes, poison wears a beautiful face. I carried that glass to a small lab in Columbia the next morning. The room smelled of ethanol and cold metal. The tech, Lydia, worked without ceremony. She pipetted, fed the sample into the spectrometer, and watched the readout like someone waiting for a verdict. "Chloral hydrate and a beta blocker," she said, voice low. "That's not a drink. That's a setup." Her words landed like a blow I had learned to name. Vanessa had studied pharmacology once. The pieces slid together too easily. I sealed the report in an envelope and felt the heat outside sting against the chill that had settled under my ribs. Back at my desk, I pulled the investment files. The transfer agreement I signed months ago bore a second signature, too bold. The ink a hair darker. I zoomed in until the pixels lied. The authentication token matched credentials only Patrick Hayes ever had access to. The same system he maintained for us in 2017. Poison, I wrote in my notebook. Poison Quoist transfer trigger. 3 days later, I pressed into the old finance server. Small line items, consulting fees. Supplier reimbursements, striped across months like camouflage. They totaled close to $820,000, siphoned into a shell at Cayman Islands. V&H Consulting LLC. Vanessa and Hayes. On one ledger line. Finalize after her condition. I watched them through the glass of the restaurant again. Vanessa laughing. Patrick's hand possessive on her shoulder, and wondered how many times they'd imagined me gone. That night, an automated email pinged my screen. We confirmed the pending life insurance policy for Ms. Hortensia Bloom. Beneficiary, Mr. Patrick Hayes. The policy was for $3.5 million, created 24 hours after the opening. I closed the laptop and wrote the plan's name in my journal. Operation Clarity. Collect, confirm, contain. Don't chase revenge. Chase evidence. That rule had built my career, and now it would save my life. I called Mira Dalton, a federal prosecutor I once mentored. After listening in silence, she asked, "You have proof?" "Enough to start a war." At my glass-walled office, we agreed on one thing: no headlines. "Then we go internal," she said. "Clean, sealed, invisible." Call it Operation Clarity. I assigned Augustin Carter, my former IT lead, to recover every trace Patrick had touched. Mira froze suspicious assets under review. 3 days later, Augustin called. I got something. On screen, Vanessa poured from a silver vial. Patrick whispered, She'll rest soon. I watched once. Encrypt it. Name it Trust01. He also found Patrick's remote access to my home cameras. The IP matched his office. They were watching me. I stayed silent. Silence was leverage. That night, I rebuilt the timeline. Poison, forged contract, insurance, surveillance, motive, greed, and beneath it, the only weapon I need is truth. Then came the detail that froze me. My cameras went dark for 14 minutes the night the insurance file was sent. Someone had entered my home and photographed my medical records to complete the fraud. They were waiting to strike again, so I gave them a chance, on my terms. I emailed Vanessa. Doctor says my heart condition is worsening. She replied fast, Don't worry, rest at my house in Savannah. Mira smirked. She's taking the bait. Hours later, proof arrived. A new life policy, filed that day, naming Patrick as beneficiary, effective next Friday. We placed a tracker on her car, hid a recorder in my necklace. Marcus soon sent audio. After next week, everything resets, Vanessa said. Patrick answered. The fixer's ready if Plan A fails. I wrote one line in my notebook. Phase 2. Invite them to my table. Then I built a deadman trigger. If I didn't log in within 48 hours, every file would go straight to the Department of Justice. If I died, justice wouldn't. Savannah dripped with quiet rain that Friday. The river outside Vanessa's house, rippling like dull glass. She'd called earlier in the week, her voice soft, careful. I really want to make things right. Let me cook for you, just the two of us. I agreed easily. Sure, I have a few things to say too. But I didn't come alone. Mira Dalton came as my assistant, carrying a black bag with recording devices, sterile vials, and an emergency federal seal order. Vanessa opened the door, glowing, perfectly staged. Oh, you've lost weight. You look exhausted. Age, I said. You'll understand someday. The house was spotless, the table glowing under white light. Beaumont and Finch champagne waited on the counter. Different brand, same silver cap. You still have expensive taste, I said. One indulgence never hurt anyone. She smiled. While she talked, Mira's phone camera clicked, taking shots of the bottle, her glove brushing fingerprints from the neck. A faint metallic bitterness crept through the air, familiar to anyone who'd seen a poison case up close. In the bathroom, Mira later found a small vial in the trash. Propranolol 40 mg. She slipped it into her evidence bag. Dinner began smooth and practiced. Vanessa's voice tightened. You've always controlled everything, even my life. Maybe because I know what losing control costs, I replied. Patrick arrived late, carrying a paper bag, inside, a contract. What's that? Just paperwork I'd like you to sign, easier for everyone. How convenient, I smiled, drinking only water. Midway through dinner, I laid my knife down. Do you ever think about what happens when you mix alcohol and beta blockers? Vanessa froze, Patrick's forehead beaded with sweat. No one moved. A drop of champagne rolled off her glass, staining the linen pink. You might want to wash that well, I said softly. Fingerprints are stubborn things. I stood, smoothing my coat. Dinner was lovely. Give my regards to your fixer. Her eyes went wide. My what? Oh. I smiled. Just a name I saw in Patrick's schedule. Maybe I misread. I walked out. Mira drove, behind us. The house glowed dim and trembling, like a candle burning out. By morning, confirmation arrived. Edmund Keats, an Atlanta fixer, had received a $25,000 retainer from Patrick's account. The GPS tracker under Vanessa's car showed she met him at a garage outside the city, for exactly 14 minutes. The puzzle was complete. Only one move left, the final setup. I sent an email that afternoon, Friday at 10 Srong a.m. Bloom Forensics HQ. We'll settle everything peacefully. Her reply came instantly. Thank you, sis. I knew you'd see reason. I smiled. Oh, I will. 3 days before the meeting, I prepared the room like a war map. The conference space was sterile glass and steel. 1 wooden table, 4 chairs, 2 hidden cameras. Mira laid out the evidence chain folder, lab reports, the photo of the propranolol vial, the insurance email, the voice recording about the fixer, and the video from the tasting room. That night, I opened my father's old watch from the safe. Its second hand ticked with the same precision he once demanded of me. Justice doesn't need to shout. He used to say, it just needs to be on time. To ensure timing, I sent encrypted backups of every file to the Department of Justice under a delayed send protocol. If I didn't cancel within 24 hours, it would forward automatically, a quiet insurance policy. The night before, Mira asked, You sure you can face them? After what they did, I said, they deserve to see the evidence, not the police. I didn't sleep. I brewed coffee and watched the river lights flicker like commas in the report I would close tomorrow. Friday morning, 9:55. Vanessa and Patrick arrived, elegant, rehearsed, confident. Patrick carried a brand new Mont Blanc pen. Let's make this official, Vanessa said, her smile perfect. Yes, I answered, rising to meet their eyes. Official. They didn't yet know the truth. The room they'd walked into wasn't a meeting. It was a courtroom, and the evidence was already the judge. 10 o'clock sharp. The 12th floor conference room gleamed with glass and white light. The Charleston Harbor mirrored behind it. Everything sat in place. The hidden cameras, the sterile folders, the witnesses seated quietly in the back. Mira Dalton faced me across the table, her composure steady, her pen poised like a gavel. I adjusted my father's watch. Its second hand ticked, deliberate and patient, as if it knew this moment had been waiting for years. At 10:03, the elevator doors slid open. Vanessa and Patrick entered with the confidence of people arriving to collect what they thought they'd earned. Both were dressed for victory. Patrick carried his new Mont Blanc pen like a trophy. Let's make it official, he said, flashing his practiced smile. Yes, I replied evenly. Official, Mira began. Before we proceed, standard disclosure. This session is being documented and recorded for transparency. Vanessa's brows furrowed. Recorded? I thought this was private. It is, I said, folding my hands. Private justice is still justice. Mira pressed a key. The screen behind me lit up. The first image, the security footage from the tasting room. Vanessa leaned over my glass, tilting a silver vial. Patrick beside her, whispering, She'll rest soon. The sound died in the room. The hum of the city beyond the glass vanished. For one perfect moment, even time held its breath. Vanessa stood abruptly. This is absurd. Sit down, I said quietly. We're not finished. Slide after slide appeared. The toxicology reports from 2 independent labs, identical in findings. The photo of the propranolol 40 ml bottle retrieved from her trash. The life insurance policy naming Patrick as sole beneficiary, $3.5 million. And finally, the Cayman Bank records, V&H Consulting LLC. Mira's voice was clinical, precise. The paper trail is complete. Motive, means, execution. Patrick's face drained of color. This can't be real. We didn't. You can contest it in court, Mira said, lifting her eyes. Or settle here. Your choice. I reached into my briefcase and placed 2 envelopes on the table. Their white edges glowed under the light. Envelope A, I said. You walk away broke but free. Envelope B, DOJ gets everything, and you both go to prison. Silence. The kind that reveals everything words can't. Vanessa's eyes filled first, trembling with disbelief and the faintest trace of shame. "You planned this all along." "No," I said softly. "You did. I just took notes." Patrick's hand shook as he reached for the pen. The scratch of ink sounded like a confession. Vanessa followed, her tears falling onto the paper, smearing her name into a blur. The stain spread slowly, like a bruise on the truth. Mira gathered the documents, sealed them with the red federal stamp. "As of this moment," she said, "you have relinquished all legal rights to Ms. Bloom's assets and interests." I stood. "We're done here." They left without a word. The glass door whispered shut behind them, leaving only the faint tick of my father's watch. I took it off, set it on the table. The hands stopped at 10:44, the precise minute everything ended. Mira waited a moment, then spoke softly. "You should know something. The evidence package, videos, reports, the whole chain, it uploaded automatically when they signed. The escrow protocol triggered itself." I met her eyes. "So even if every copy burned, one would live, sealed in a federal archive, proof that truth existed, even when no one saw it." Justice didn't shout, it simply stamped, signed, and stayed. The office was quieter than I'd ever heard it. Sunlight fell across the sealed envelope on my desk, thick, official, final, stamped across its face. Case, Operation Clarity, sealed by order of the Department of Justice. No flashing cameras, no cuffs, no crowds waiting for a verdict. Just silence, and the knowledge that the truth had finally found its place. Vanessa's email arrived that morning. "You won. I hope you're happy." I didn't answer. I deleted it. Added a final line to the case log. Subject, closed, no prosecution. Mira came by, setting a coffee on my desk. "You really don't want them charged?" she asked quietly. I looked at the seal again, the way it gleamed like a closed door. "They'll live with the truth," I said. "That's a heavier sentence than prison." For 3 days, I cleaned the office piece by piece. Old files, old memories, all sorted and stored. When I opened my safe, my father's watch sat waiting. I took it home, placing it in the glass cabinet beside a photograph of the first case I ever solved. The same kind of sealed envelope, stamped and dated to the minute. Justice had always been about timing. That evening, I started drafting something new. The Lark Haven Initiative, a fund for victims of financial abuse by family members. I transferred $3 million of my own money to start it. Marcus Avery agreed to head security. He insisted he owed me his loyalty, though I told him he'd already paid it the night he spoke up. Augustin took over cybersecurity. Mira became the legal advisor. Within weeks, the first letters arrived. Women in their 40s, 50s, 60s. Betrayed by husbands, sons, siblings. Stories I'd heard before, too many times, now written in trembling hands. One note simply said, "You made me believe justice can be quiet." I folded it carefully, placed it in the drawer beside the sealed envelope, and smiled. "That's all I wanted," I whispered. A month later, while reviewing donation records, I noticed a small transfer, $500. No name. Only one line in the memo field, "For peace." I stared at it for a long time, then closed the file. No tears, no anger, just an exhale I hadn't realized I'd been holding. Justice didn't roar. It didn't demand applause or parade its victories. Sometimes, it simply circled back, softly, inevitably, until even the guilty remembered how to breathe again. And in that quiet, I found something better than revenge. I found peace. Charleston, late autumn. The air carried that quiet kind of cool that always made the harbor smell like salt and memory. I sat at a small cafe by the water, watching the sun dip lower, the light spilling across the river like molten silver. No champagne, no contracts, no faces left to confront, just a glass of water, clear, still, honest. I lifted it, tilted it toward the light, and smiled faintly. No poison, no fear, just peace. The city hummed softly around me, boats docking, children laughing somewhere beyond the street, the creak of ropes and wooden piers. It was all so ordinary, and for the first time in years, that felt extraordinary. I reached into my bag and pulled out my old notebook, the same one that had carried every note from Operation Clarity. Its edges were frayed, corners bent, but the weight of it felt right in my hands. I flipped to the last empty page and wrote slowly, letting each word sink into the paper like it belonged there. Some wounds don't bleed, they calculate, and sometimes, justice doesn't shout. It signs quietly. I paused, reading it once, twice. It sounded less like a declaration and more like an acknowledgement of something I'd always known. Justice, when done right, wasn't about noise or glory. It was about precision, about the moment when chaos finds its rightful place in silence. Across the river, the last beam of sunlight touched the clock tower of the courthouse. It gleamed for a second, then dimmed. I looked down at my father's watch, the one that had stopped at 10:44 on the day everything ended. Now, it ticked again. Slow, steady, indifferent to victory or defeat. People like to believe closure comes with forgiveness. Maybe that's true for some. But I'd learned that not everything broken needs mending. Some things just need to be put back in order, piece by piece, until the world makes sense again. I didn't forgive Vanessa. I didn't hate her either. What remained between us wasn't love or bitterness. It was distance, the only form of peace some families ever find. The waitress passed by, refilling my glass. I thanked her, then watched the ripples fade until the surface turned smooth again. I thought of all the lives the Lark Haven Initiative had begun to touch, the letters from women who'd found their own quiet strength, who no longer confused silence with weakness. In their stories, I saw fragments of my own healing reflected back. The sun dipped below the horizon, and the cafe lights flickered on. I gathered my things, slipping the notebook into my bag, leaving only the empty glass on the table. For a moment, I simply sat there, watching the water steady itself again, until it mirrored the dusk perfectly. I smiled. Justice had come full circle, not with a verdict, not with applause, but with stillness. I stood, turned toward the river, and whispered to no one in particular. Order restored. Then I walked away, the watch ticking softly against my wrist, steady and alive, as if it had never stopped at all, 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 never stopped at all.